So faced with some shortened work hours in the near future, and a need for something to do, and seeing some people posting on social media that they might be having some struggles or experiencing some symptoms from being isolated and quarantined. They might be experiencing some depression, anxiety, hopelessness, anger, irritation, frustration, those kinds of things. Pretty normal, I think. I thought that my free time could translate into helping people with alleviating some of those symptoms. I was a bit shocked that a bunch of people said they would be interested. I wasn't sure what kind of a response I would get, so I spent the last 24 hours since making that post figuring out how am I going to deliver this, how do I learn best, what might be useful for people. And so I know that I learn best by tutorial videos, something that I can reference again and again and keep going back to and seeing examples of, so that I can practice and practice and practice and not just hear about it and not have to read it. So I figured that what I would do is I would make a tutorial video. So it's not going to be me sitting here talking to you as a talking head. It's going to be largely graphics driven. It's going to cover the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's going to cover the basics of what an ABC tool is, and it's going to work you through an ABC tool on a problem from start to finish, and hopefully people get something good out of that and they can practice the tool and make it work for them in anything that they're suffering. I will also send resource sheets out if anyone wants them. This is just one tool of CBT. There's lots of techniques. I'm not an expert in CBT by any stretch. I have a pretty good understanding of how this tool works. It's been effective for me. It's been effective for a number of my clients. It's been proven to be effective. It's evidence-based, so it's proven to be effective for anxiety, depression, anger. The relapse potential in addiction, it's proven to be quite effective for, partially because of the emotional regulation and partially because of the distorted thinking that you have around denial and things like that. So there's a whole scope of things that it can be quite good for, quite useful for. So my hope is that the tutorial video will be useful for people to be able to just apply it. If it's confusing or if you need more guidance on it, for sure hit me up, and either we can contact each other online or through email, or maybe I'll make more videos if that's what people think would be useful. I'm not really sure. So I just think I have some ability to do this stuff, and maybe it'll be useful for some people. So let's go check out the video of the tool and see where we go. Hopefully it's useful. Okay, so what happened there? As we can see, Chu received a phone call from the Ministry of Health, and then she looked worried. But what made her worried? She hadn't answered the phone yet, so she didn't have any information from the call that was bad news. This is basically how CBT sees things. It's not the phone call that made Chu worry. It was her beliefs about the phone call, without any evidence of what would be said on that phone call. She will not only experience worry, but there may be other consequences she'll suffer as well. She may avoid answering the call altogether, which would have further consequences if she's ignoring her health. She may drink, smoke, or eat to try to make herself feel better. She might feel irritable and argue unnecessarily. The truth is that she may feel uncomfortable emotions and employ any number of coping mechanisms, many of which would be familiar to her, but unhelpful. and all based on incomplete information, as she hadn't even answered the phone call. Our brains make meaning of everything, but sometimes our brains use faulty logic. They use patterns of impaired thinking called cognitive distortions. You'll probably be familiar with some of these. Here's a list. Catastrophizing is when I foresee the worst possible case scenario coming true. Labeling is when I label people or situations in a way that makes me feel frustrated, something like, this is stupid or a waste of time. Should or must statements just demonstrates an inability to accept reality as it is. This should happen, but if it's not, then I'm just setting myself up to be upset. Filtering is when I let in negative information but filter out positive information. Black and white or all or nothing thinking doesn't leave any room for shades of gray in the way I see the world. Jumping to conclusions can come in the form of mind reading or fortune telling, where I think I know what people think or what's going to happen in the future. Personalizing is assigning blame to myself for something that I may have no blame for. The fallacy of fairness is assuming that the world is going to treat me fairly and everything will work out, when that's just not the way the world works. This is not a comprehensive list. There are lists all over online that you can find. Going back to our example, what you did was most likely a combination of two distortions. Catastrophizing, sometimes called magnification, which imagines worst case scenarios, and fortune telling, which predicts that those scenarios will actually happen. These two distortions are a recipe for anxiety. Learning to identify which patterns of distorted thinking that our brains employ can help lessen or avoid that anxiety, or at least allow for healthier coping. That example may be familiar to you, or maybe you can relate to it in some way. CBT will help you examine your beliefs, regulate your emotions based on objective beliefs instead of distorted ones, and allow for more effective behaviors. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so this is the layout of the ABC. A stands for the activating event. This is what happens to or around someone. It's what we can call the trigger. B is our beliefs. And what this really is our interpretation of A, the activating event, the meaning that I make of it and what I tell myself about it. C stands for consequences. Consequences come in the form of feelings or behaviors. D stands for dispute. And what we want to do is dispute what we've told ourselves in B, using Socratic questioning and looking for the cognitive distortions. E stands for new effect. So new effective behaviors and the effect of our new way of thinking after examining our beliefs. And that's the ABC as it's laid out. And we'll show you how to use it next. Okay, so let's look at an example of how we use the ABC tool. A, the activating event in this example that I'm going to use, is that I saw a Facebook post saying that the quarantine will go on for 6 months. That's just objectively what happened. That is my trigger. B, the beliefs, the meaning I make of A or my interpretation of A, are all the things that I say in my head, non-verbally, about A. So I might say, I can't survive this if it goes on for 6 months. I might say, this shouldn't be happening. I might say to myself, things will never be normal again. Or, the world is ending. These are all possible thoughts that I might have. I might say, people are idiots if they're not adhering to or complying with the social isolation. I might say, everybody should get help from the government. Now, these are all just beliefs that I might have. The meaning that I make of A, that Facebook post that I had, or that I had seen. Now, the consequences of telling myself that, I might feel anxiety based on I can't handle this or the world won't be the same. I might feel hopeless, things won't go back to normal, depression. I might feel angry at the people who aren't complying. I might get into arguments with someone if I'm feeling these things and I'm in close quarters with people. I might start drinking, eating, smoking. I might avoid calls altogether if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Or I might just start procrastinating and not taking care of the things that I'm supposed to take care of because I'm feeling all of these other emotions. These can all be consequences of my interpretation of that Facebook post. What we want to do is we want to dispute our beliefs, like disprove them. if my anxiety and everything, all those consequences are caused because I believe these statements, then I want to dispute them. So I can't survive this. I could dispute that by saying I am surviving it. And then I want to look at a list of cognitive distortions. I want to figure out which distortion it is in that statement, if there is a distortion. The distortion that I think is in this statement is most likely catastrophizing. I'm imagining the worst possible case scenario, which is that I can't survive this situation. I do the distortions in a different color because if I can identify the distortions, the patterns of thinking that my brain uses, then I can really shut them down as they come up. The next belief I had, this shouldn't be happening. Well, it is happening, but I can only control what I do about it. I can't control what's happening. That's the way I would probably dispute that. And we know from our list of distortions that we did briefly, even though that wasn't a complete list, this is going to be from the should or must distortion, and it's an inability to accept things as they are. So saying this shouldn't be happening is just going to end up with me feeling anxious or angry or frustrated, but there's nothing I can do about it. So should or must, and that goes in red. The next belief that we have, things will never be normal again. Well, there is no evidence of this. There have been other pandemics in the past. People are very resilient. People can adapt. I'm a survivor in a lot of ways. I've gotten through a lot of difficult things. So I can look for evidence that will tell me that things can go back to normal because in the past they always have, or whatever a new form of normal is, or that I can adapt to whatever the new form of normal is. And I can say anything in this dispute that resonates with me that disproves what that statement says, that disputes the statement, things will never be normal again. In some ways, I could say other countries are returning to normal. I see two distortions in this statement. One is fortune telling, where I'm saying that things are never going to be normal. I'm predicting the future. The other one is catastrophizing, because this is the worst case scenario. The next statement that we have, the world is ending. I want to find a way that I can dispute that resonates with me. I want to keep in mind that what resonates with me might not resonate with everyone, and my examples will be possibly for me, and they might not resonate with you. You need to find something that helps you. So what I've written here is, people and countries are recovering. And maybe that resonates with me, like I say, and maybe it doesn't with you, and sometimes you need to be creative to figure out a way that you can dispute the statements in a meaningful way that helps with our goal, which is to manage and regulate those emotional states. So the cognitive distortion that I see here is actually, again, two. Catastrophizing, where I'm saying the worst case scenario is happening, and then some mental filtering, where I am taking in some negative information, but I'm not letting in any positive information. So my next belief was, people are idiots. And that was looking at the fact that a lot of people aren't doing the social distancing, they aren't doing the isolation, so I'm just labeling them as idiots. But the truth is that most people are complying. I haven't let all that information in. So I'm labeling them as idiots, and I'm filtering out any of that positive information and just letting the negative in. So I might be starting to see some patterns by now. Now the next belief that I have, the last belief, everyone should get help from the government. Around the world, governments are stepping up and helping, some faster than others, some slower, some more comprehensively, some of them with cash, some of them with relief for different things like mortgages and things like that. Some governments are stepping in and clearing out hospital beds to make sure that there are beds and ICUs available. So I can look at all of that and I can just say that governments are actually helping many people in this situation. Now the cognitive distortion that I see in this one is should and must. Okay, now that I'm done the disputes, Socratically and with the cognitive distortions, we're going to move on over to E, the new effect. So the first new effective behavior that I have written here is an ABC. This is a tool that people can practice and use over and over again now that they've learned it. It's always a better effective behavior to look at my thinking that created my emotional state than to act based on those negative emotions. The next one is journaling. I can do thought journaling, mood journaling, but it actually is a way that I can process things in an isolated state. The next behavior I put was mindfulness. Mindfulness is evidence-based, scientifically proven to help with stress reduction. The breathing is what helps us hack our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, that leaves us in an elevated state. So if I can control my breathing, then that's going to help regulate that state, alleviating some of the anxiety. So there are lots of apps that you can use. There are lots of things on YouTube, such as Yoga Nidra, which is sort of guided meditation. There's sound bowl meditations that are on YouTube. There's lots of different ways that we can access this. There's also online meditation communities. I see a friend of mine posting about it all the time. They're free and you can just kind of log in and do remote meditation guided by good teachers. The next thing I put is a gratitude list. I've done this many times over the years. When I focus on gratitude, I start seeing the world through a lens of what I'm grateful for, which leads me not really looking at the world through such a negative way, and it makes me feel more grateful. And when I'm grateful, I don't want to change how I feel, so I'm happy with that. The next thing I put is a daily planner. Anxiety can be exacerbated by not having a schedule, not having a routine. So really having a plan, schedule, maybe hour to hour, or do this in the morning, do this in the afternoon. I wouldn't make it too rigid. I would leave some room so that, life happens, so you need some flexibility in there. The other thing I put here, asking friends to reach out to me. Because if I'm experiencing these kind of feelings of being overwhelmed or isolated, depressed, anxious, I might not have the resources in that moment to reach out to talk to a friend because I might think it's overwhelming or it's a burden to them. So asking them to reach out to me. I put technology on here. So FaceTime and Zoom, lots of people are doing that to stay connected to other people. Of course, there's Skype. And the last thing that I put is to exercise if you can. That's going to help with sleep hygiene, routine, boredom, all kinds of different things that exercise can be really helpful for. Okay, so that's how we work through an ABC from start to finish. If I start employing some of these new effective behaviors, I'll be less vulnerable to further triggers. I'll probably build up resilience, and it just gives me a way to kind of work through any sort of stressors that I might be feeling now. Okay, so that's the video. Hopefully it helped people have some understanding of the ABC tool of CBT. It's not exactly how some people do it, but yeah, hopefully it's good to help people sort of manage their emotions and get into more effective behaviors. If you think it was useful, or if you'd like to see more content like this, hit like and subscribe, and we'll get more content out to you.